Revolvers have a long-standing reputation for packing serious firepower, and when it comes to stopping power, some calibers hit like a freight train. You might be looking for a reliable self-defense round, a deer killer, a bear stopper, or something that balances power and control. If you prefer a revolver over a semi-auto, there's a cartridge for the job. But which ones truly bring the most raw force to the table? In this video, we'll talk about the hardest-hitting revolver calibers out there, from the .22 Magnum, proving that small can still be mighty, to the thunderous .454 Casull, which can stop a charging grizzly in its tracks. Along the way, we'll cover legendary rounds like the .357 Magnum, .44 Magnum, and .45 Colt, breaking down their ballistics and the ammo loads that make them shine. Whether you favor penetration, expansion, or sheer kinetic energy, there's a caliber on this list for you. By the end of this, you'll know the best revolver ammo for delivering maximum stopping power. Let's get to it. Number 10. .22 Magnum. The .22 Magnum takes the little .22 long rifle case and stretches it, packs in more powder, and often a heavier bullet. That boost in velocity and energy lets you effectively deal with varmints and small game, and there are a few firearms out there sized just right for self-defense in this caliber. Various ammunition makers have also come up with different specialty loads over time, such as hollow points for better terminal performance and even shot shells for up-close pest control. Federal's Premium Personal Defense 50-grain JHP is a popular pick if you want to balance penetration and uniform expansion. You're likely to see around 1,530 feet per second out of a rifle and about 1,200 feet per second when fired from a 4-inch revolver. That generates about 160 foot-pounds of energy from a short-barreled handgun, which is more potent than some folks realize. Gel tests often show the bullet expanding to about 0.35 inches across, giving you a decent wound channel for such a small caliber. Federal engineered these rounds with 2 to 4 inch barrels in mind, so the penetration stays controlled without sacrificing effectiveness. Not everyone wants a bigger bore revolver, and .22 Magnum proves you can still get reasonable defensive performance from a compact setup if you choose the right load. Number 9. .32 H&R Magnum. The .32 H&R Magnum hasn't been getting a lot of attention until fairly recently, when Lipsey's decided to roll out a Smith & Wesson J-frame carry model chambered for this round. I personally don't like it because I think Smith & Wesson should have chambered it in .327 Federal Magnum, which I'll talk about more in a bit, but I digress. It seems to me that the new Lipsey 6-shot carry revolvers have a certain appeal for folks who prefer mild recoil yet still want enough energy on tap. Typical bullet weights hover between 85 and 100 grains. Buffalo Bore's heavy .32 H&R Magnum launches a 100-grain projectile at roughly 1,187 feet per second from a 3-inch Ruger SP-101, delivering about 313 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. That kind of performance is comparable to some standard pressure 9mm loads fired from a full-size barrel, which might surprise a few people who think .32 calibers are weak. Recoil is gentler than .327 Federal Magnum, making this cartridge a solid pick for recoil-sensitive shooters or those looking for a lighter kicking option, especially older folks who might not enjoy dealing with harsh muzzle flip. It isn't the cheapest ammo around, and the .327 Federal Magnum is more powerful, but the .32 H&R Magnum deserves a look if you want something friendlier to shoot that can still handle defensive duties. Number 8. .38 Special. Most of you have probably shot the .38 Special, but did you know that it was introduced in 1898 as a major step up from the weaker .38 Long Colt? It quickly found a place with police departments and private citizens alike because of its moderate recoil and decent stopping power back in the day. It also has a rich wartime history, having served American troops in World War II. Its popularity didn't fade after that, and many still trust the .38 Special as a go-to defensive round. Different loadings have emerged over the years, including plus P versions that push velocities higher. One well-known defensive option is the Buffalo Bore version of the old FBI load. It uses a 158-grain soft case semi-wad cutter hollow point that can run at about 1,040 feet per second and produce up to 379 foot-pounds of energy out of a Smith & Wesson Model 60 with a 2-inch barrel. That's a serious punch for a snub-nosed revolver. There's a reason that the .38 Special stuck around for so long. and it's also the parent cartridge for the .357 Magnum, which means revolvers chambered for .357 can handle .38 Special without a problem. If you're looking for a time-tested round with manageable recoil and a long track record, the .38 Special remains a solid recommendation. Number 7. 44 Special. Some might think of the 44 Special as living in the shadow of the .44 Magnum, but that sells it short. This classic round has been on the scene for decades, delivering a comfortable balance of power and controllable recoil. It's ideal for someone who wants home defense capability or general shooting without absorbing the intense snap you get with a Magnum load. Hornady's 165-grain FTX critical defense is often praised as a factory option that combines velocity with softer recoil. From a 4-inch barrel, it can reach around 980 feet per second and generate about 351 foot-pounds of energy, which is plenty to stop an assailant without being too punishing. Federal's American Eagle 200-grain semi-wad cutter hollow point comes out of a 4-inch barrel at roughly 870 feet per second for around 336 foot-pounds of energy. That load is known to offer a nice blend of penetration and expansion for close-quarters situations. Buffalo Bore, meanwhile, takes it up another notch with a 190-grain lead semi-wad cutter hollow point advertised at 1,100 feet per second, translating to about 510 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. That puts it in the same league as certain 10mm loads, which is pretty impressive for a round that many folks think is just a milder version of the Magnum. Whether you're recoil sensitive or simply want a well-rounded cartridge, 44 Special is worth taking seriously. Number 6. 327 Federal Magnum. Federal Premium Ammunition took the .32 H&R Magnum concept and pushed it to the absolute limit when they created the .327 Federal Magnum. They slightly lengthened the case and fortified the walls and base to hold pressures up to 45,000 psi, double what .32 H&R can handle. That engineering leap gave shooters a small-bore revolver cartridge that falls right under the .357 Magnum in raw power, but with less felt recoil. It also lets you fit 6 shots, or even 7 in some models, into a cylinder that might otherwise hold 5 rounds of a larger caliber. Like most Magnum revolver rounds, a wheel gun chambered in .327 Federal Magnum can also chamber its weaker, shorter predecessors. That's why I mentioned earlier that the Smith & Wesson should have made the Lipsy's exclusive .32 H&R J-frame in .327 Federal instead. Why they didn't? No clue. Maybe because Ruger pushes the .327 Federal hard and Smith & Wesson just doesn't want to play along. Federal's own 100-grain JSP typically clocks in at about 1,500 feet per second from a 4.2-inch barrel, producing around 500 foot-pounds of energy. American Eagle has a similar load that can reach around 1,551 feet per second with a muzzle energy of about 534 foot-pounds. That's substantial power for such a petite diameter. The .327 Federal Magnum showed folks that small caliber revolvers can be genuine contenders for defensive use. It's a terrific choice if you want near Magnum energy and the capacity advantage of extra rounds in your wheel gun. Number 5. .357 Magnum. Elmer Keith's experiments with hot rodding the .38 Special paved the way for the .357 Magnum, a round that earned its place in the defensive and hunting world. It gave law enforcement a powerful new tool, and everyday shooters soon realized it offered serious flexibility. Revolvers chambered for it can also shoot .38 Special, giving you a lot of options depending on what you feel like practicing with or carrying that day. Plenty of high-octane loads exist for the .357 Magnum. Corbon's 125-grain JHP can leave a 4-inch S&W 686 barrel at around 1,496 feet per second, packing around 621 foot-pounds of energy. Federal's 125-grain JHP goes a bit higher, at around 1,511 feet per second, hitting 634 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. That sort of performance is exactly why so many people keep a .357 by the nightstand. Rugged revolvers like the Ruger GP100, Smith & Wesson 686, and others handle these loads reliably, and having the option to shoot cheaper .38 Specials for practice is a big plus. Folks have even taken deer with this cartridge, which shows just how adaptable it can be. .357 Magnum is an all-time classic that still holds up for personal defense, range fun, and more. Number 4. 41 Magnum. Developed in the 1960s, the 41 Magnum arrived with the intention of bridging the gap between the .357 and .44 Magnums. Elmer Keith and Bill Jordan had hoped it would be manageable enough for police duty while still packing enough power for hunting. It ended up being too stout for many law enforcement agencies, but it carved out a niche among handgun hunters who wanted flatter trajectory and a bit less recoil than the .44 Magnum. That legacy continued into the modern era. Even if the .41 Magnum is less mainstream, Smith & Wesson and Ruger still produce revolvers in this caliber, and dedicated fans appreciate its combination of power and shootability. Buffalo Bore's 170-grain load can approach 1,551 feet per second out of a 4-inch barrel, resulting in around 908 foot-pounds of energy. Speer's 210-grain Gold Dot offers roughly 1,268 feet per second and 750 foot-pounds. Those are no small numbers. Hunters rely on the .41 Magnum for medium to large game, and it has enough oomph to serve as protection in bear country if you know how to handle your revolver. It might not be the most common round on gun store shelves, but it's worth owning if you're after something that hits hard without the extra bark and bite of a .44 Magnum. Number 3. 45 Colt. The 45 Colt, also known as the 45 Long Colt, goes all the way back to 1872. It was adopted for the legendary Colt single-action army and served the U.S. military for nearly 20 years. Early black powder versions fired a hefty 255-grain bullet at about 1,050 feet per second, which proved powerful enough that the Army eventually decided to tone it down and make it more manageable. It may be over a century old, but it's enjoying a new wave of popularity, thanks to modern ammo designs that push it into serious territory. Some loads are ideal for cowboy action shooting or mild target practice, while others are formidable hunting or self-defense rounds. Corbon's DPXP 225-grain offering can reach about 1,210 feet per second and deliver 732 foot-pounds of energy. Buffalo Bore takes it further with their Heavy Plus P Outdoorsman, which propels a 325-grain bullet at around 1,325 feet per second, translating to a massive 1,267 foot-pounds of energy. That's a lot of punch for a cartridge that's been around since the days of the Old West. Another interesting aspect is that many revolvers in .454 Casull or .460 S&W Magnum can also fire the .45 Colt, so shooters can keep a stock of milder rounds for practice or personal defense alongside the Magnum-level loads. The .45 Colt has shown it can adapt to every era, from black powder frontier days to modern high-pressure hunting requirements. Number 2. 44 Magnum. In addition to the .357 Magnum, Elmer Keith was also instrumental in turning the .44 Special into something with a lot more power, and that led to the .44 Magnum's debut. It didn't just catch the eye of handgun hunters and serious shooters. It became famous in popular culture, thanks to Clint Eastwood's portrayal of Dirty Harry. After that, it was cemented in people's minds as the big, tough revolver round, capable of stopping anything from a home intruder to a grizzly bear. What keeps the .44 Magnum relevant is that modern ammo makers continue to produce loads that push this cartridge's boundaries. Buffalo Bore's 270-grain load can exit a 5.5-inch Ruger Red Hawk barrel at around 1,460 feet per second, delivering a thunderous 1,261 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. Federal's HydraShock 240-grain version clocks about 1,367 feet per second and around 996 foot-pounds of energy from a 4-inch Smith & Wesson 629. That's serious stopping power for those who might be adventuring in places where large predators roam. Keep in mind, you can also fire .44 Special from a .44 Magnum revolver, which makes range time much more comfortable and gives you more flexibility. It's easy to see why so many revolver enthusiasts keep one in their arsenal for hunting, wilderness protection, or even home defense. It might be overkill for everyday threats, but there's no denying it can handle just about anything if you need that level of power. Number 1. .454 Casull. Back in the late 1950s, Dick Casull, Jack Fulmer, and Dwayne Marsh started tinkering with .45 Colt cases to get more bang for the buck. Their work led to the .454 Casull, a cartridge that quickly overshadowed the .44 Magnum by delivering ferocious power and velocities that seemed incredible from a revolver. Built with reinforced case that can tolerate pressures as high as 65,000 psi, it typically launches a 300-grain bullet at around 1,600 feet per second, generating roughly 1,900 foot-pounds of muzzle energy. Some loads push even further, but the recoil grows just as fiercely. Hunters and guides in bear country often pack this round because it's proven capable of stopping large game quickly. A single shot can mean the difference between walking away safely or ending up in real danger when a bear charges. A number of modern revolvers and single-shot pistols now come chambered for .454 Casull, so you are not limited to just a couple of models. The main trade-off is the intense blast and recoil. But if you want a revolver cartridge that handles true big game hunting or serious backcountry protection, the .454 Casull delivers in spades. Even though it's been around for decades, it continues to be the benchmark for raw revolver power. So there you have it, the most powerful revolver calibers. Were there others you think we might have missed? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to hit like, share this with your fellow gun enthusiasts, subscribe for more content like this, and click that bell icon so you never miss a video. See you in the next one.